Jump to your module directory, your input module directory, and in the steps folder, go ahead and pick the 8th step, which is called autocomplete. In this step, what we're going to do is take the array of data that we've stored as a variable and use that to autocomplete the input. As somebody starts to type in a search, they'll see suggestions that include their previous searches, which they can select to autofill that input. So go ahead and open up this file, copy the entire code, and paste it over all of the code in your input.module file. There are 3 steps to adding autocomplete to an input. The first is to create a function that generates a list of search results that can be passed to the autocomplete script. So it needs to be in a format that it can understand. Next, we need to register that function as a callback through hook menu so that it can be used as a page. And third, we need to add the path to that page as an autocomplete path attribute for the input we want to add autocomplete to. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first step, which is creating our function that generates the list. So this is the function we've added at the bottom of the page here, and we're calling it input search autocomplete. There's no convention that you necessarily need to follow here, though adding autocomplete to the end is helpful. And this function ultimately is going to be passed a string, which is the current value of the input that the autocomplete is being used with. So we're going to set that to default at an empty string. We're going to begin an array, initialize an array called matches, and this matches is what's going to be passed. So any matches need to be added to this array. Our next step is to grab our array from the variable that we saved in the last step, which is input search history, which contains an array of our previous searches. And so this search history is going to be an array. Next, we're going to loop through this array and find any items that match the current text that's being typed in. We're going to do that by using a function called stristr, and this is a PHP function that will check for the existence of one string inside of another string with case insensitivity, so any capitals that are used don't matter. And if there's a match, we're going to go ahead and add the match to our matches array. Now the structure here is that the key is the value that we want to be used as the value for the input, and the value is going to be what's displayed in the list of suggestions. In our case, we want whatever is in the list of suggestions to populate the text field, so we're going to assign both the key and the value the phrase variable. Once we've looped through and found all of our matches, the final step that we need to take is to take our array and run it through a function called Drupal JSON output. So what this does is it converts this into a JavaScript structured object. So that's what JSON means if you haven't seen that before. And that structure can then be used by the autocomplete script that's in Drupal core to generate the list that's output as the drop down to the autocomplete. Okay, so this is our first step, creating the function. Now we need to register that step in our hook menu. So I'm going to scroll up to the top where our hook menu is, input menu right here. And we have a new item, and we've called it input/search autocomplete. So this is the path that's going to be used as a callback for our autocomplete. We're giving it a description, even though this description isn't used. This is just for visuals when examining the hook menu. And the page callback is the name of our autocomplete function that we just built. We're giving it access callback of true, so anybody can access this. And we're giving it a type of menu callback, which means that there's not going to be a menu item registered for this, but it can still be used as a page. Okay, and the final step is adding the autocomplete path to the input we want to add it to. So we're going to do this by using hook form alter to alter the search input. So we've already altered it somewhat. Let's go ahead and scroll down to our hook form alter here. What we did before was added a submit function to it. And so we're going to continue inside of this case by adding the autocomplete path attribute to the search block form input. So this is the name of that text input, and the attribute, notice the hashtag at the beginning, is called autocomplete path. And we're just going to assign this the path that we assign the function that we just created to generate the list. Okay, so now that we have our three different parts, our function, our menu item and hook menu, and our autocomplete path assigned to the field that the autocomplete is for, we can go ahead and test it out in our browser. So make sure that your module is saved, jump to your browser, and we're going to need to flush our caches because we're adding a new item to the menu registry. Now we see here in our input that there's this little circle, and this is the loading circle. So if you see this, it means that there's an autocomplete path assigned to this input. So I'm going to go ahead and type in first search. And you see here that that loaded, and it was searching for any items that match that, but we haven't searched for that before, so it's not going to display. But I'm going to go ahead and click enter, and by doing so, it will register it as part of our history. You see our item from our previous example here that demonstrates that we're saving it to our history. Now if I start typing in first, we see a drop down here. It's formatted a little off, so we could improve this, but we could select this by clicking it, and it autofills our search now. Also, from our previous example, we search for example, and so if we start typing that, we see that there's a match here for example. Let's do another one, second search. And we'll go ahead and save that. I'm pressing enter. And now, if we start typing in search, we see we have two items matching it, first search and second search, and we can select either one. So, pretty nice. You'll see autocompletes used throughout Drupal. There's a couple of built-in ones that you can leverage simply by assigning the autocomplete path to an input. And I've mentioned those here in the source code. There's user/autocomplete, which will autofill usernames, and taxonomy/autocomplete, which autocompletes taxonomy terms for tagging. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at autocomplete, let's move on to our next example.